Hello and welcome. Today I wanted to shoot a follow-up video on Neopixel. Now if you're not familiar with what Neopixel is, let me cover that real quick. Neopixel is the new technology in the Saber community and in the Saber market. A lot of Sabersmiths are embracing this technology rather wholeheartedly. Electrum Sabercraft, when they did their hilt reviews recently, spent a large portion of time talking about Neopixel and advancements in it. Vader's Vault has embraced this technology to the point that one of their recent hilts they only offered with Neopixel. So it's becoming more and more prevalent, and a lot of people are really excited about it. And basically what we're talking about is we're talking about LEDs in the blade as opposed to having a hollow lightsaber blade like we used to. Now we've got a series of LEDs that run up the blade like we used to in the Hasbro sabers, and more recently in the Makoto sabers. So what that allows people to do is things like a scroll-on effect, which you can see here, and a scroll-off, where the power feeds from the bottom and retracts back into the hilt. So that's one of the big draws for people for Neopixel, and I'm going to talk about the advantages of Neopixel, the disadvantages of Neopixel, the claims Neopixel works, and ultimately, or claims Neopixel makes rather, and ultimately whether or not a Neopixel blade is right for an individual consumer. So, a while back, let me start with the elephant in the room. A while back, I shot a video called Why I Won't Buy a Neopixel. And that video, while my opinion on Neopixel was accepted by some people, a good amount of the feedback I got on that was somewhere between scorn and ridicule. Things about how can you not embrace this technology, you're living in, or basically assuming that anybody who doesn't is some sort of saber troglodyte who doesn't want to devalue their own collection. So eventually, one of my biggest issues with Neopixel was the extreme increase in price. And eventually a saber came along that carried a Neopixel install and wasn't too very expensive. And I did a review on that saber. It's this one right here, the Pox Store Boars, which is a really nice saber. So now I have a Neopixel in front of me, and now we can talk a little bit more about Neopixel. So let's start with the claims that Neopixel makes. First among them, well, there's three main claims I want to cover. Durability, brightness, and versatility are the three main reasons that people pick up Neopixel blades. So let's talk about durability. Neopixels or the people who are for Neopixels argue that Neopixels are very durable. If you've ever used like an old Black Series saber and sparred with it, you'll notice that most people have broken one of the little LEDs in there and have ended up with a dead spot on their saber. Now Neopixel, while it is guarded, it has a light strip, it has foam, it has a polycarbonate blade, you can get them in heavy grade. The fact of the matter is that Neopixel is still less durable than a standard blade. I have this on pretty good authority from some people within the Saber Legion community who have broken Neopixel blades. I've actually broken an LED and a Neopixel blade just from a drop on grass, so it doesn't even take a very hard hit. But you can break blades, or you can break connections or cause blades to malfunction. So a Neopixel blade, if you go for it, you are sacrificing durability, regardless of what people say. Now, can you duel with a Neopixel blade? Yes, much the same way that you could play a DVD on a PlayStation 2. For those of you who are old enough to remember that, PlayStation 2 said, you can play DVDs on this, and then people got it, they played DVDs on it, and yes, it will play DVDs, but it burns out your PS2 like nothing. So, people were buying $150, $200 PlayStation 2s, and they were playing DVDs on them, and they were burning them out in a matter of months. So, yes, you can play DVDs on a PS2, but why would you? Yes, you can duel with a Neopixel blade, but why would you? There's wear and tear. Why would you spend $100 and some odd on a blade when you can get a dueling blade and duel with that with less worry and less potential for breakage? Neopixel blades, because they do have all this technology in them, there is more potential for breakage. The Neopixel connector pad on there makes contact with pins inside here. Putting it in and out, sliding it around, is going to wear on this pad. When I talked about things malfunctioning, let me see if I can show you that a little bit here.
Smooth gray, smooth fuzz. Road.
TC. There we go. Alright, so this is a white blade, but this blade specifically has some malfunctions in it, where a couple of the pixels that are in here work great with red. With blue, they just show up as slight dead spots. With white, or anything that has red in it, they over-trigger on red and won't trigger on anything else. So what that leads to, not certain if you can see it here, is a pink spot. I'm not certain that the camera picked that up, but if it didn't, I'll try to put a still frame image there. But when you get damage to these things, they get weird colored spots, or they get dead spots within them, or the scrolling effect doesn't work as well, and that will happen with Neopixel Blades. So durability, yeah, they're a lot more durable than a Black Series. They're a lot less durable than a standard blade. Brightness. Now, brightness is one of the things that Neopixel is known for, and are Neopixel Blades brighter? Yes, they are. But a lot of the hype that goes into Neopixel brightness is a little bit undeserved. As you can see from these images right here, if you take a Neopixel blade out into direct sunlight, you end up with exactly the same thing that you'd get if you had a regular blade in direct sunlight. You end up with a white blade with maybe a little bit of pinkish if it's lit red from spot to spot, but you don't end up with true color in direct sunlight. You take it into the shade, you get your color back. You get that on a decent quality LED as well, as you can see in this picture. So, are they brighter? Yes, they're brighter by a little bit. And as I've said in the past, if every lumen matters to you, then Neopixel might be the way to go. The one thing that I will give Neopixel in terms of brightness, they market themselves as being more evenly illuminated, and that is definitely true. Neopixels are more evenly illuminated up the blade. In a standard blade, you'll often end up with flare, and then the blade color tapers out a little bit towards the end. This is more something that shows up on camera than it is something that you see in real life, but you will see it at least a little bit. The biggest issue with blade diffusion, though, is the tip illumination. So when I'm showing something like this Ripper blade right here that has a shine-through tip, you can see there's some blade die out over here. Now, partially that's because this is a dyed blade. This would be less so in others. But you also see the issue with the tip illumination up here. Now this is a shine-through tip, so this is better illuminated than than usual, but we still end up with that seam. All right, I'll talk about this in just a little bit, but okay, we end up with sort of a dull tip on there. Okay, you use Neopixel and you're ending up with LEDs that extend all the way out into a hollowed-out tip usually. So what you end up with is much better tip illumination. So for tip illumination and for general diffusion, I will give Neopixel that. The one thing about Neopixel, though, is you do end up with some of what they call corn cobbing, which is where you see the slight darker spaces between the pixels when you look at it up close. So you don't get that on a standard blade. You do get that on a Neopixel. So while these are brighter, while they are more evenly diffused, you end up with that corn cobbing effect upon occasion. So, brighter, yes. More durable, or as durable, absolutely not. The other thing that I wanted to talk about with them is versatility. Now, Neopixel does have some interesting features. It has programmability. Because you've got LEDs in the blade, you can tell those LEDs to do different things. So let me show you a few things here. Okay, this is white. Let me actually switch to something that isn't. Here we go. So we've got a flicker. Flicker is something that you can do with a standard. With Neopixel, it looks much the same. Okay. Blaster.
Smooth gray.
Okay. Localized flash on clash is one of the things that Neopixel offered. During that last clash, you noticed that instead of the whole blade flashing, one little pixel up here flashed. And that is something that Neopixel offers. Is it a big draw? I don't think so. I actually kind of prefer the whole blade to flash because it has that sort of effect of disturbing the current of the blade. But for people who want the localized blaster deflect, that's fine. It's not necessarily going to be local to where the blade is hit. It's just going to be somewhere. All right, so here we go. Another interesting thing that you can do with Neopixels, blade color differentiation. This goes from red to blue with purples and pinks in the middle. There's that localized blast again. So Neopixel gives you the ability to do stuff like that. It also has some animations in it. Let me find one of those. Okay, this is a rainbow cycling animation. Now this is the one that I really like. This made it worth having the Neopixel right here. This thing is so ridiculous and so hideous that it's just awesome. But this is one of the things that you can do with a Neopixel is this rainbow. Oh, there's a strobe.
Teensy.
Oh, that's a non-font.
Jedi. Teensy. Smooth Jedi.
That's blue.
Smooth gray.
There we go. Here's a flame effect. Now, the flame effect is something that a lot of people really love. I think it looks more like a malfunctioning saber because if you see it in real life, you see those dark spots or those waves that are traveling up that get darker towards the tip. Because you're dealing with an actual white blade, those aren't dark spots or absence of blade. Those are just places where you see the blade itself unilluminated. And it doesn't look very good, in my opinion, in real life. You can see it here in the tip quite a bit. It's an interesting effect. It's a novelty. It gets annoying after time.
Smooth fuzz.
Okay, here's an unstable blade. Now this is very similar to the flame blade, except without the yellow in it. If I do a blaster, it shoots a little white up the blade. Okay, again, this looks kind of hideous in person, at least in my opinion. It looks okay on film, but not great, especially not near the tip. There's a rain effect as well. I'll try to show that right here. The rain effect is interesting, but again, it looks kind of like it's malfunctioning. But again, so these animations that they have on there, it's kind of a mixed bag. Yes, you can do some interesting things with Neopixel that you can't do with a standard. But in terms of versatility, what you give up, if you have a Neopixel blade, you have a Neopixel blade. If you have a standard blade, you can have a whole set of them. And here's a Ripper Purple. I decide I want to have a purple blade. I have a purple blade. If I've got a color-changing saber, I can have a purple blade with white lightning. Okay, I decide I want a black blade, black blade. I decide that it's Christmas and I want a troop and I want a candy cane saber. Okay, just a little bit of red vinyl tape on a white blade, and there I have a candy cane saber. So the versatility, now, and even when you get into premium blades, like this is a twisted blade. This was one of the Nebula blades. Okay, that I'm doing right there, picking up a whole bunch of blades and swapping them into my saber, that's something you give up when you get into Neopixel. You have the blade. Now that said, Ripper Blades has started to work on Neopixel blades. He's made some flat ones. He's made some that are basically like this with the Neopixel in there. And I think that's where the Neopixel market is. If you're dealing with a flat blade, you can't duel with it anyways. It is just for show. And so if you want to put all kinds of technology in a flat blade to make it even more awesome, great, do it. But if you're looking at something like this, this is unimpressive when it's turned off. This is just a white tube. Okay, you can do some things with this white tube, but in essence, it's still an expensive white tube. For my money, if you're going to spend this kind of money on a blade, you should get a more interesting blade that you can use with any of your sabers. So going back to the idea of swapping blades, you might ask, can't you just swap around Neopixel blades? And to a certain degree, yes, you can. You have one of those fancy Ripper Neopixels, you can swap it in place of this tube. But the problem with that is, since the technology is in this blade, another issue with Neopixel is something like this. Now, what's going on right here is that this is a saber that was configured for a 28-inch blade. I put a 36-inch Neopixel blade in it, and what I ended up with is the saber only illuminating the 28 inches of the blade that it was set to illuminate. So if I wanted a shorter blade, I could plug that into a Neopixel, but I wouldn't be able to get tip drag, which is kind of a null feature for me anyways. It's basically the idea that if you clash. You can get the tip to light or to flicker and just have the blade clash up here, so like you're dragging it across something. You put a shorter Neopixel blade into a saber that's designed to have a longer one, you give up tip drag. You also make things like the unstable saber or the flame saber look weird. You put a longer blade in, you end up with dead spots on the blade. So since the technology is in there, the ability to use that technology takes more work, takes more programming, takes more thought, adds more expense, and sort of eliminates some of what you can do without that. Now, one point I do need to retract about the Neopixel and my original reservations about them is the weight. So here I have a standard Vader's Vault mid-grade blade. It's actually an enhanced day blade. And in a standard saber, the point of balance is right about here, a couple inches out from the emitter. All right, I popped the Neopixel blade in, and the Neopixel blade is a little bit heavier. But that extra ounce or two only really moves the point of balance about 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch out. So I originally thought that the Neopixel blades, my original impression of the Neopixel blades, which was kind of generated by my experience with other string blades, is that it would add a lot of weight. In the case of heavy grade Neopixel blades, that might be the case, but it's the heavy grade adding the blade rather than the Neopixel itself. So they still handle fairly well. What you're limited on in terms of use is what you dare do with it because of the technology and the extra parts or breakability of it. So again, the one thing that I do have to retract is that, the point of balance is roughly the same. So to recap, durability, I'm going to have to say no on a Neopixel. Brightness, yes, to a degree. Versatility, give and take. You can do some things with a Neopixel you can't do with a standard blade. You can't do some things with a Neopixel that you can do with a standard blade. And one other downside that I keep forgetting to mention is that Neopixel, because you've got all those extra lights, the demands on your power, on your battery cell, are going to be heavier with Neopixel. And for me, again, that is also kind of a big deal. If you want to carry around a standard blade for a few hours and use it intermittently and take it to a con, it's a whole lot easier to do. You put a soundboard in it, the draw increases and you get less life out of it. You put Neopixel in it and the draw increases again rather dramatically. So your battery dies quicker. You get less use out of it. You have to carry around extra battery cells. It's something that's manageable, but again, if you're going to carry the saber around, light it up from time to time, and get that, wow, what the heck is that factor, then great. If you want something that's good for prolonged use and for versatile use and for day-to-day use, then maybe not. So in terms of what Neopixels are good for, if every lumen matters to you, if you want a saber that you're going to turn on every so often to show off, that rainbow blade is ridiculously show-offy. It's ridiculous in a lot of respects, but I just love it. If you want to turn something on so that if people in the room go look at it and go, wow, what the hell is that thing? That's the effect that you'll get out of a Neopixel. If you want to use it for spinning and you want it to be that much brighter and that scrolling effect really matters to you. The scrolling effect for me is kind of a null issue because the blade is there. It's not like it comes out of the hilt. It just lights up from the top and lights down from the bottom, but when it's unilluminated, it's there. So the scrolling effect for me is a novelty. But if that scrolling effect is your jam, and you're spinning and you want every little lumen that you can get, then Neopixel is a way to go. If you want to duel with this thing, or if you do risky moves when you spin, or if there's any potential for wear and tear on your sabers, or if you just use them so much that there's going to be wear and tear, Neopixel's not the way to go as far as I'm concerned. And for me, that's the big deal breaker on a lot of it. I'm not sorry that I bought this Neopixel saber. The price was right, and it gives me the ability to do some things that I couldn't do before. But the next saber that I buy, if it has a Neopixel option, I'm sure as heck not going to opt in for that Neopixel option. I'm going to take the baselit because for my money, it allows me to do more. And this saber, I'd probably use it more if it didn't have Neopixel in it. As it is, I only use it to do Neopixel things. So look at what you're going to do with it. If it's a shelf queen, if it's a showpiece, if it's something that you take to 3 or 4 cons a year, then great, Neopixel might be the way to go for you. If it's a working saber, definitely don't do this. It's added expense and it doesn't pay off. So that's my thoughts on Neopixel. Hopefully now that I've got one in front of me, that's a little bit more justified. If you've found this entertaining, interesting, or useful, then please join me back for more, and I'll see you next time.